Hey, rock stars. Hypervac is back, and it's upping the cleaning and restoration game once again. Originating in the 1980s as a humble family-run air duct cleaning service in southern Alberta, Canada, Hypervac Technologies has evolved into a global powerhouse in duct cleaning equipment. Their product lineup boasts powerhouse solutions such as the Revolution 360 vacuum and groundbreaking tools such as the Cobra View camera system, all designed to enhance your efficiency. But here's the kicker. Hypervac Technologies dominates the competition with their top-selling non-PTO air duct truck in North America. Hypervac is now back with a bold new claim. Hypervac Technologies now keeps stock on all major products for immediate worldwide shipping, offering overnight freight to the USA and Canada, plus everything they offer is proudly built in North America. And it's not just about cleaning ducts. It's about elevating indoor air quality because after all, your ducts are your lungs. Their expertise extends far beyond North America with worldwide shipping available. With over 4 decades of industry excellence, Hypervac Technologies is your ultimate partner for reaching new heights in the cleaning and restoration business. So what are you waiting for? Visit their website at www.hypervac.com. Thanks for listening to a word from our sponsor. Let's get back to the show. Welcome to episode 162 of the Business Development Podcast. And on today's expert guest interview, we bring you Derek Armstrong, Director of Calgary Economic Development and former Manager of Innovation Ecosystems at Prairies Economic Development Canada. Today, we're talking all about PrairiesCan and the opportunities that are here for you right in Alberta. Stick with us. You are not going to want to miss this episode.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 162 of the Business Development Podcast. And my gosh, do we have an absolute rock star expert guest for you today. We are going back to the Alberta ecosystem, and today I want to introduce to you Derek Armstrong. Derek is a seasoned leader and champion of innovation, serving as the Manager of Innovation Ecosystems at Prairies Economic Development Canada. With over 17 years of experience in the federal government, Derek has honed his expertise in driving strategic initiatives to foster economic growth and sustainability. Based in Calgary, his passion lies in empowering Alberta's innovators, entrepreneurs, and small businesses, ensuring they all have the resources and support needed to thrive. Leading a dynamic team, Derek is dedicated to advancing sectors such as clean tech, ag tech, life sciences, digital tech, and economic inclusiveness, with a strong focus on fostering diversity and inclusion within the innovation ecosystem. His unwavering commitment to building a brighter future for Alberta through innovation is evident in every aspect of his work, making him a driving force for positive change in the region's economic landscape. As Derek continues to spearhead initiatives that pave the way for innovation and prosperity, his impact reverberates far beyond the borders of Alberta. With a powerful blend of experience, passion, and dedication, Derek Armstrong is not just shaping the future of Alberta's economy, but inspiring a new generation of innovators and leaders to push the boundaries of what is possible, ensuring a legacy of growth and opportunity for generations to come. Derek, it's an honor to have you on the show.
Really happy to be here, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me on.
No, it's the pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine. I know when we connected on LinkedIn and we kind of started chatting, I knew I wanted to have you on the show because we've had people from the Business Development Bank of Canada, from Edmonton Unlimited, from Alberta Innovates, and trying to just better understand the Alberta ecosystem and how this whole thing fits together can be pretty confusing. for a lot of startups and entrepreneurs. There's a lot of amazing things available to them, which is great. But that understanding of how they all work together is important, and it tends to be missing. And so one of my goals with this show was really to just shine a big bright light on all of these various organizations and try to get some cohesiveness as to how they all work together. So I appreciate you doing that for us today.
No problem. And no pressure there. As you said, it's a very messy space, innovation and entrepreneurism and so forth. And there's so much out there and so many different organizations working in this space. And so, I'll try my best, but I don't think anyone has totally figured it out yet, or how to figure out how to present that to the ecosystem to say, this is it and this is where you go. And so it's a bit messy, but I actually think innovators like a bit messy too, so it's not such a bad thing. You know what I mean?
We don't mind getting a little dirty from time to time.
Exactly.
I think it's amazing. I think, just the fact that we have all of these support ecosystems within Alberta is truly an amazing thing. There are so many places that just don't have that available to them. And so to be in a place where we're just saying, I don't know how to utilize all this stuff available to me is so much better than being in a place where it's like, we don't have anything available to us.
Exactly. If I were an entrepreneur, I would absolutely love being here in Alberta, be it Edmonton, be it Calgary, be it, Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, Fort Mac. There are supports all around this province for an entrepreneur. And part of my job is to really, support that ecosystem for entrepreneurs, and also help them pathfind it, help them figure out where the best place is for them and at what point in their entrepreneurial journey. So it's you mentioned Edmonton Unlimited, and we have a similar platform here in Calgary called Platform Innovation Center. And so Edmonton Unlimited, Platform Innovation Center, I consider those as like your one-stop shop. So if you are an entrepreneur, I would say the first door you go knocking on is the Platform Innovation Center. There's more than 100 partners in there, ecosystem partners that are just ready to help you out as an entrepreneur and provide you with whatever you need, be it mentorship, be it access to capital, be it talent, be it some of that pathfinding. And so Platform Innovation Center, Edmonton Unlimited in our two biggest cities are kind of your one-stop shop for an entrepreneur.
Totally. So take us to the beginning, Derek, though. You didn't end up here just being a rock star in innovation. What led you on this path? 17 years in government. That is multiple governments you've worked with. Talk to us. Tell us, how did you end up on this path?
Yeah, well, I don't consider myself a rock star in innovation, by the way, Kelly, but thank you. I'm born and raised Montreal, so I'm an English Montrealer. My parents are from a small English town outside Montreal in the Eastern Townships, and moved to Montreal, in their 20s. And so I'm born and raised in Montreal, lived a lot of time there, and then I actually became quite good at basketball. I started off, of course, in Canada playing hockey, and then became quite good at basketball. I got a scholarship to go do my undergrad in the States, full scholarship to go play Division II basketball. Did that, came back to McGill, came back to home to still play CIS basketball and get my master's there. And then my first job at a school was a co-op, a 4-month co-op in Ottawa at Environment and Climate Change Canada. And it was in climate change strategic policy. And so went there, lived there for 4 months, and I loved it so much. I really enjoyed being in Ottawa, advising cabinet, being part of some of those high-level discussions, even at a really young age in my mid-20s. And so I just really fell in love with, public service and giving back and being part of, high-level decisions across, pan-Canadian decisions. And so Environment Climate Change Canada for 7 years, and then I moved over to Infrastructure Canada for 7 years, doing some infrastructure policy and working on a large infrastructure project, Canada's largest infrastructure project to date in terms of public-private partnerships, so a $5 billion bridge outside of Montreal. And then, my wife, who is a specialist, had an opportunity out here to work at the Alberta Children's Hospital. And I was a little bit after, I think at that point, 15 years in Ottawa, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do in Calgary. I don't think there's much of a federal government presence in Calgary. Like, this is the Ottawa bubble. I've been here for 15 years. What am I going to go, do out in Calgary? But, there is this federal government agency called Prairies Economic Development Canada. So it's it was such a great landing spot for me to work with PrairiesCan. It's really focused on place-based economic development. So economic development 5 years ago, it was a little bit new to me. I was in Ottawa, and like I said, pan-Canadian, big,
Sure.
decisions, climate change, infrastructure, and so forth. And I came out here and I was like, okay, this is economic development. And so, 5 years later, I've just been really, I found my passion. I think I just absolutely love it. I love being part of the ecosystem. I love building this ecosystem. I love all the stakeholder engagement that you do and the public facing nature of the work that you do out here. It's so much more different than Ottawa in that respect. So yeah, I've been out here for 5 years with the family, have 3 boys, my wife's specialist over at the children's.
Wow.
I tell everybody I bought a truck, bought a trailer, I took bought a truck, bought a trailer, took up skiing, took up camping. So I'm a total Albertan, and I don't think I'm ever going to leave. I absolutely love it here, and it's such a great place to raise a family.
Yeah, amazing. Man, that must have been hard for you. I can't imagine what that choice would be like. Even if an opportunity for me popped up in like Ottawa, like you said, it's home. Like by the time you spent 15 years anywhere, it's home. And at that point too, you're working probably fairly close with, the big wigs in the federal government. And I am like, what was that choice like? I imagine that being really, really hard.
It was, and you do feel, important in Ottawa, especially when you're, I was, I'm a bureaucrat, so I'm not a politician, of course, but I was at, some of these cabinet meetings, like advising, different ministers, writing their presentations, providing them with recommendations, and going to these cabinet meetings and having, a minister, the late Minister Prentice present what you wrote and what you advised, and then,
Wow.
you get kicked out of the room when they actually make their decisions. But you feel somewhat important to be at that table and to really just be there. So it was hard. So whenever you do a big move like that, it takes a good year to really kind of get settled in your new place. But I don't regret absolutely after that year coming here and building a network and finding something I'm really passionate about is it didn't take too much longer. Yeah.
Well, you bought the truck and the trailer and you've been to the
Absolutely.
mountains. So I'd say that you're a solid way there.
That's right.
Alberta, we have a worldwide audience, and Alberta is probably one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth. In Calgary, where Derek lives, you can actually see the mountains from downtown, and Banff is there, Kananaskis is there. It is a worldwide tourist destination. And so I agree. You know what? Like, sure, Ottawa was probably tough to leave, but at least you got to come to Calgary.
Absolutely. And you know what, Kelly, I actually still feel like a tourist 5 years later. It's funny that you say you can see the mountains because I jog home from work and I kind of, I jog up a hill and you can see the skyline and you can absolutely see the mountains. And every day when I see that, I'm like, this is this is home for me because 45 minutes I'm in the mountains, we're skiing, we're camping, and we're trying to go out there almost every single week. So Calgary and Alberta, but Calgary specifically is so livable is like the right word. We are ranked as one of the most livable cities in the world. Ottawa was great as well. So Ottawa is always very livable. Like, that mid-sized city, 1 million people, not a lot of traffic. You can get places. With 3 kids, I have hockey, basketball, dance class to take the boys. And if I was in, Ottawa, Toronto, even Montreal, where I grew up, like it's not as sustainable. It's like so hard, just getting around. So Calgary, the right word for Calgary and Alberta is just that livability. Really struck me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for my fellow Canadians, we're always looking for more workers in Alberta. So feel free to come give us a little visit. Derek, you're my first kind of official from government. And, I've intentionally stayed away from the government side because in my mind, business is business and you have to operate business, whether you are conservative, liberal, or somewhere in the middle, which I think most of us are. And so I've kind of taken some time here to try to stay away from politicians. I think you're not a politician, but I definitely have kind of made a choice to not do that intentionally because I think that most Canadians do fit somewhere in the middle, and I don't want to polarize anybody. I want to I want to teach business. I want to inspire and educate people. And I think the best way for me to do that was to keep neutral, which makes sense, I think, for most businesses in general. But you're not either or, but I would love the insight. I would love to know, what is it like to work in government, to work next to these politicians? Is it hard? Is it challenging?
I think it is, but I think, you have to be, as you alluded to, you have to, as a government bureaucrat, you have to be apolitical. You have to check that at the door when you go to work. Of course, everyone has a personal opinion. I'm a Canadian and I can vote, even though I'm a government official. I am
Yeah.
allowed to vote. And so, we all have our personal opinions, but I take it with I have a really strong responsibility to, when I'm working, to provide advice that is apolitical, that is quote unquote fearless. And it's not to say that I'm absolutely clueless and that I'm, don't know what politicians want or need or what they're driving towards. Like, that is part of my job, is to know the priorities of the government. Of our democratically elected government, they have certain priorities. They have certain things that they want to do. And so as a government official, we try to do that for them. We try to get them what they want, but it has to fit within certain boundaries. And we have to tell them that, okay, well, if you want to make this decision, these are going to be the consequences, good and bad. And so I've faced that many times in my career, where I've had to give that quote unquote fearless advice. And maybe sometimes it's not what they wanted to hear. And I think that is my responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Just for me, thank you for doing that. It is a very needed job. And at the end of the day, we need people advising and giving great advice to our politicians, because I do think that politicians are extremely disconnected from everything else going on a lower level. Just like I don't understand their world, just like I am in no position to tell a politician how to do their job, because I don't know what their job is or what their job tasks even look like. But on the same front, I think that we need advisors like you to go in and advise them and say, look, like, this isn't going to work. Your policies that you're trying to do here, they are going to negatively impact business. They're negatively impacting individuals. And so thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that there are people like you out there, Derek.
And there's a lot. Like, I mean, it's not just me. I do actually, working inside government, I think most people work for government because that appeals to them. They love that public service. They love, giving back to their community and to their country and so forth, and providing that advice. Everyone has their role. Like, I respect politicians, and they're doing a certain job as well. And we have our job, and there's a line in between. And as you said, I work for different governments. And so the clerk of the Privy Council office, who is like Canada's top public servant, can you imagine working so closely under one prime minister, and then, 4 years later or whatever it is, working so closely under another prime minister with vastly different priorities, oftentimes in different directions and so forth. So that is a tough job, but
No kidding.
that's what they signed up for.
Yes, yes, I suppose so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, I know as a Canadian, sometimes I'll hear policies and stuff that they're working on, and to me it will feel very disconnected. And I think it's just because I don't understand it. And I think we have to honestly open our eyes, as Albertans, as Westerners, and just realize that we don't know their job either. And it's like, we can have our opinions and say, like, you know what, I don't like that policy, or I don't like what they're doing. And regularly I do that. But I also don't understand what it takes to be a leader or to be a politician. And so, just like they couldn't tell you how to do your job because they're not experienced in it, I think on some level we have to be really careful with the way that we kind of pass judgment when we don't really understand the full picture of what they're dealing with. And I think the answer to it all is we need more transparency in general across all sectors and across all governments, because I think there's like this veil of just not knowing. And I think if we could remove some of that veil and better understand the things that went into them making those decisions and actually see it, it would make us all better.
Oh, I totally agree with that, Kelly. I think there does need to be more transparency. And I think, the different governments that I've worked under, do say that, and there is like access to information that you can request as a citizen, as a journalist, or whatnot. I don't want to open the floodgates here because does cause a lot of work for us for these access to information requests. But the point is that everything we do as public servants actually is, we call it atypical. And so someone could put in, say, like, I want every briefing note on this topic, or, every email on this topic. And actually we have to disclose all that information. So it is accessible, but I get what you're saying. I agree that some of these big decisions that get made, sometimes you do only learn about it as a citizen, when the budget's announced, or when an announcement is made, and you're kind of like, oh, I really disagree with that. How did they make that decision? Who did they consult? I think, there's definitely a lot of stakeholder engagement and consultation that does get done before these decisions, but it doesn't touch every Canadian. It's a massive country.
That's
and
right.
It's so different. It's so vast. So some of these, when I was working in Ottawa, some of these, like, I call them pan-Canadian policy decisions. Like, that was so challenging. My brain was hurting every day just because it's so contextual across this country, and it's not always a one size fits all. So you put out this regulation, you put out this policy, and of course there's going to be winners or losers all the time. And that is why I absolutely love being out here in the region. And I always say I don't ever want to go back to Ottawa, because I feel like that place-based federal presence, place-based economic development is so valuable. Like, we know the context out here. We know the business community. We know the stakeholders. We know the opportunities, gaps, and challenges, and everything. And so, and we advocate on behalf of Alberta into Ottawa. We say this would have unintended consequence XYZ out here. This wouldn't work. This would be beneficial. So we are trying to influence some of those big decisions coming out of Ottawa.
Yeah. Derek, why do you think that? And I get it. You nailed it. Canada is huge. I think people don't recognize how big Canada is. Just to give you an idea, I flew to Montreal once, and I'm pretty sure that flight was like 5 hours from Alberta. Like, it is a long way. It takes less time to go to Mexico than it does to fly. And that's not even to the other end of the country. That's like, I don't know, halfway. Right? Like, it's bonkers how big Canada is. It's huge. But why do you think there is such a disconnect? Like, and I don't mean a disconnect in general. I guess what I mean is, I feel like Eastern Canadians feel different than Western Canadians, and vice versa. Did you notice any of that when you moved out here? Is it different? Like, you have an opinion that I haven't been able to have. Someone who's spent a long time in the East and has now spent a fairly long time in the West. Would you say that we're the same?
No, it's 100% not the same. We, like you said, such a major, massive country that there's different cultural differences across this country. Like I said, born and raised in Montreal, moved to Ottawa. I was like, whoa, this is very different. There's almost like a culture shock when you go from Montreal to Ottawa, and then Ottawa out to Calgary. Oh my gosh, such a different culture. So people are very different across this country, in my opinion. I mean, we're all Canadians. That is like our default, but I do think that there are some major differences. And I think a big part of it is we just also don't know a lot about each other, which is kind of sad to say. But like, when you think all these things about Calgary and Alberta when you're living in Ottawa, or you think when you're living out here, you think all these things about Montrealers or whatnot. And so much of it is so generalized and untrue. And yes, we can travel, as you said, you visit Montreal or you visit Vancouver, it's not the same as like living in that place. So I have had the benefit of, spending quite a bit of time in different parts of this country. Not all, of course, is, I've only touched the tip of the iceberg, but I have seen some major cultural differences. And I think it's a good thing, but I think it can make it challenging for a government policymaker at the same time.
Yes, I think that any prime minister, and I don't care who it is and what side they're on, has their work cut out for them when it comes down to unifying a country of this size.
Absolutely. That is a tough job. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Well, Derek, I really appreciate you taking some time on that. I know that those weren't always easy questions, but I do appreciate it because, like I said, I just haven't been able to have that perspective on this show. So I thank you for stepping up and doing your best with it. I know it's not easy.
No, all good. No, happy. I'm an open book. I'm transparent. I am
I
transparent.
appreciate that. Well, I'm ready to get into Prairies Economic Development Canada. What the heck is Prairies Economic Development Canada?
Yeah, happy to talk about PrairiesCan. And yeah, so I've been here for about 5 years. So we are a federal government department. And we're a regional economic development agency. We cover Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. So there's 7 of these agencies all across Canada. So there's PrairiesCan, there's PacificCan for Vancouver, there's an Ontario, FedDev Ontario, there's a COA out in the Atlantic provinces. And our mandate is to essentially grow and diversify the economy. And no small feat, not ambitious at all, especially in Alberta with strong oil and gas and ag and manufacturing and so forth. Those are our traditional industries. But our mandate out here is to help diversify the economy, and so it's more resilient and has and it's more can provide long-term prosperity. So we used to actually be called Western Economic Diversification. We changed our name 3 years ago. It was a branding change and a little bit of a focus change to Prairies Economic Development Canada. And we have different roles that we are doing to try to diversify the economy. We're best known as an quote unquote investor, but we also do some convening, advising. I already mentioned some pathfinding, and I already mentioned some advocacy work, but I'll touch on the investor role. So what we're doing is we're quote unquote investing into organizations out here. So we'll invest directly into companies. So companies that are scaling, that are trying to diversify the economy, be it in clean tech, ag tech, med tech, advanced manufacturing. We are providing them with zero interest, essentially repayable loans. So that's one stream of funding as an example. The fund that I manage is called the Regional Innovation Ecosystems. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to essentially build an innovation ecosystem in Calgary, for example, where an entrepreneur or an innovator has everything they need to be able to succeed. And so I'm investing into not-for-profit organizations like academic institutions, industry associations, accelerators, incubators, collision spaces, applied research, testing, and so forth. So if you're an innovator and you need some de-risking, some testing, you can go here. If you need some mentorship, you go to CDL Rockies. If you need that one-stop shop, you go to Platform Innovation Center. And that is non-repayable funding. So that's more like our grant funding that we're putting out there. So in the last few years, the team and I have deployed $100 million into this ecosystem, into Calgary and some pan-Albertan projects. So $100 million into like 50 different initiatives, all that I mentioned, like mentorship and acceleration, incubation, and all that amazing stuff. So I could really talk a lot about that, but I'm really proud of that work. We're only a team of 5, and to deploy that amount of federal funding in such a short period of time, I think was really impressive. And it's all the credit to my team because they do all the work. I do some of the high level thinking and visioning and stakeholder engagement and so forth. And this is what the ecosystem needs, but they do all the work behind the scenes. And I have a rock star team.
First off, wow, like unreal, $100 million. That is crazy. How do you make your decisions as to what is going to get that funding? Obviously, like you said, you're focused on like med tech, ag tech, things like that. But are there certain sectors that you guys are doubling down on?
So yeah, like I said, we have 5 kind of key priority sectors, and those are all listed on our website. We're actually quite transparent as to what makes a strong application, and that's all on our website. There's parameters and so forth. Of course, KPIs are return on investment. So the more jobs you're going to help create through your initiatives, the more investment you're going to be able to attract, the more revenues you're going to create for the companies that you're supporting. That's gonna get you at the top of the pile, and so forth. But you hit a key priority sector, you get KPIs, you have the right management, governance structures within your organization. I think those are some really positive attributes. But and so that's kind of how we make our decisions. But we are really proactive as an organization. So we will not just sit back and wait for applications for funding to come in. You can go on our website and you can apply for funding, and we get that. We get inbound applications. But what we really kind of what I pursued as what I kind of really pushed was for us to go out there, be part of the ecosystem, talk to innovators, talk to entrepreneurs, say, what do you need? What is holding you back from commercializing your solutions faster, from creating jobs and getting more revenues? What do you need? And so we are a partner to the ecosystem, and that's a big part. So we'll curate different projects with different organizations and are also our partners. So we work closely with Alberta Innovates. We work closely with Emissions Reduction Alberta. We work closely with other federal government departments as well. And we co-develop these solutions together as an ecosystem.
Oh, amazing. Okay, we're going to get into that because I want to better understand how that works. But one of the questions that just came up for me is, what is holding a lot of these entrepreneurs back? What are some of those challenges that you're seeing coming up over and over and over again?
I would say the top three for me are people, money, and skills. And so talent, capital, and the right skills. And so, of course, access to capital. Any company, especially hard tech. So if you're in, clean tech, especially, and you have like something physical that you want to deploy out there to reduce emissions, that you need money, you need access, and it's high risk. So you need high risk capital to develop your solution, to prototype it, and then to scale it. So access to capital is number one. And then people, so talent. So you're building a team, and you need specialists, you need HQP, so high quality personnel, you need engineers, you need a lot of very intelligent people. And so that talent to build your team is really, really important. So, yeah. And then, like I said, you just also just need that infrastructure. It's hard to build a business. So when I say infrastructure, is everything that we are trying to provide to the ecosystem. And so, you need mentorship, you need collision space, you need piloting, you need testing, you need access to wet labs, you need all these different things. And so I would put all that into another bucket, and that's really contextual based on the company. But the top two are people, talent, and money, of course.
Okay. And when it comes to like talent, what is the solution there? Like, what do you guys typically recommend?
So we're real big fans of work integrated learning. So getting students into these co-op positions or short-term jobs right out of school, and we've actually supported some work integrated learning programs through our non-repayable programming. So Calgary Economic Development has an initiative called Talented YYC, where it's a partnership between Calgary Economic Development and 9 academic institutions in Alberta. And so all these students can go on this platform, and employers can go on this platform, and it's like a matchmaking, and you get these students fresh out of university into these companies, and they can hit the ground running there. But also there's different platforms for more senior talent as well. And I think that's getting our youth into some of these positions, and also some more senior level. So of course, talent attraction is big push right now from our provincial government. Alberta is calling.
Yes, it is. We know that. We know that people. There's been a shortage of people for a while, and it's changing. I think we're getting more people, but at the same time, you're right. We can use some more. So if you're listening from East Coast, we would love to see more of you.
For sure. And then when it comes to the capital, I think that's also a problem that we're trying to solve. And so we always hear in Alberta that there's a lot of money on the sidelines, right? So there's a lot of oil and gas, a lot of money on the sidelines. And so what we're trying to do is trying to spur that and catalyze that into the tech sector, into the innovation sector. And so we supported an organization called Startup TNT. And so what they do is that they bring together angel investors in the community, and they're actually operating all across Western Canada now. And they hold these events, so they hold like pitch nights, and it's like a competition, top 20, and then the finals and so forth. And they just it's bringing people together and building awareness and knowledge of some of these amazing companies and putting them in front of some of these angel investors to try to deploy some of that capital that is on the sidelines into these amazing tech companies.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. One of the questions that I have, though, Derek, is why do we need so many organizations to accomplish these things, right? It's like we have Edmonton Regional Innovation, Aaron, right? We have Edmonton Unlimited, you right, Startup TNT, Alberta Innovates, and I know they kind of tend to fund those things like the regional initiatives. But it seems like a lot of organizations to do the same thing, to grow a startup, to grow tech, or whatever it is we're doing. Why is it that that's the route we've went?
I don't know if it's like the route we went. I think it kind of happens organically. But it's a question. It's a really good question. I think there are a lot of different organizations doing different but similar things. And so one thing that I've kept an eye on is really when we do fund an organization, we're really looking for something that is unique and non-duplicative. So and that's why it's so important to know the ecosystem and to kind of be aware of who does what, because you don't want to fund an organization and then another organization is like, we're doing the exact same thing. What are you doing? And so that would make no sense to duplicate supports, right? In some sectors, there's inevitably, because some of these sectors like clean tech, energy transition, they're so big that, of course, maybe there's going to be a little bit of duplication, two organizations doing similar things like an accelerator, but they're different people, different type of programming and so forth. You're going to get a little bit of duplication. But what we are trying to look at inside PrairiesCan is really a complementary investment where organizations, what they're doing is unique, where we're not fragmenting the ecosystem further and we're actually bringing it together. So we're looking at some consolidation. We always push organizations to work together and maybe come together and consolidate. So definitely, it is a bit messy out there, and there's a lot of different options for an entrepreneur and innovator. And we talked about that at the beginning, is that, part of my role is to help that pathfinding. I get a lot of inbound from entrepreneurs and innovators, LinkedIn and email and so forth. And I do help direct them to different organizations like CDL Rockies and, Platform and Startup TNT and so forth. So I do a lot of that. A lot of pathfinding.
So you being the federal arm, like in my mind, when I'm looking at it from, you're obviously controlling all federal funding that comes into the startup ecosystem. Is that fair to say?
No.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's another kind of whole can of worms there, is that there's a lot of different federal government departments doing different things as well. PrairiesCan doesn't have all the funding. We have a good portion of it, and we are the boots on the ground out here, I would say. But however, there's a lot of different funding programs even inside the federal government with other different government departments that are operating outside of Ottawa. So Natural Resources Canada, you got the Canada Growth Fund, who just invested into two companies out here in Calgary, Ever and another company, and so you have the Environment and Climate Change Canada. You have Strategic Innovation Fund. You have a lot of different programs inside the federal government, and so we're not the only ones. I know.
Oh my goodness! You just made this way more complicated, Derek.
I know, and it's so funny that I know, it's something else that we hear all the time, is that there needs to be consolidation of federal government programs. If I would find it somewhat frustrating. There's some websites out there, some government websites where you can go if you are an entrepreneur and you can kind of answer 10 questions. It's called innovation.canada.ca. You can answer certain questions, and then it kind of spits out a list of different federal programs that you could potentially be eligible for. So at least it kind of gives you a direction, and it hones in on certain programs. So there's that. You know what? There's a lot of consultants, which is a little bit crazy to me that there's consultants out there helping people access government programs and funding. That's how
Yeah.
complicated it can be. Like I said, massive country, big federal government department, it's a good thing that there's a lot of supports available out there. But the unintended consequence is that it can be a bit challenging. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of different programs. And all
Yeah.
these programs have different parameters and different requirements and different speeds and different timelines and so forth. And so, and that's why it's really important to come talk to someone like me who is out here, who can say, these are the programs that you should target, or talk to a consultant. There's a really awesome organization here in Calgary called Thin Air Labs, and they provide that service to entrepreneurs where they will help them access certain government programs. So don't do it alone. Definitely seek that advice from either me inside government or some of these consultants.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, so we got PrairiesCan, and they must be feeding like Alberta Innovates, and then they distribute it out to like the various RINs, the regional innovation networks. And that's not how it works at all. But I bet you I'm not alone in thinking that was how it works.
Oh, for sure. Like, yeah, absolutely. If you're outside, I'm inside government, Kelly, and I don't know how it works half the time. But like, if you're outside government, absolutely, you wouldn't know how this funding is flowing and so forth. But Alberta Innovates is provincial, so that's coming from provincial taxpayers.
Okay.
Prairies Economic Development is coming from federal taxpayers, and an organization like Calgary Economic Development, Edmonton Global, that's coming from municipal taxpayers. So it's different pots of money, different, different pool of taxpayers where it's coming from. However, I would say that PrairiesCan, because we are in the federal government, we are the federal government, so larger pool of taxpayers, we do distribute some funding to Alberta Innovates for certain initiatives. So as a funder, I can fund, and we have with great success, Alberta Innovates, because there's some initiatives that they're doing that we absolutely love, and we say, hey, let's throw into this initiative. So I heard that you did have Doug Holt from Alberta Innovates
We
on,
did.
and I listened to that podcast. So I work really closely with Doug and his team, and some of the things that they're doing we love. So we did provide, for example, $5 million into their hydrogen center of excellence that they're doing there. We said, this is amazing, $5 million. We did that. We're looking at some other initiatives with Alberta Innovates as well. They also did a $35 million business accelerator and incubator initiative where they attracted world-class accelerators and incubators here to Calgary. So like Plug and Play, Thrive SVG, Startup 500. And that's another thing that PrairiesCan supported. We said, we love it. Absolutely. So we can fund Alberta Innovates directly. But they
Okay.
have their own mandate and their own funding from the provincial government as well. Yeah,
I see. Okay. So it's more of a partnership.
absolutely. Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
it's a great
Okay. Well,
partnership. Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you for explaining it on that level, because I think that really did break it down for people. It's like, oh, okay, like that gives me a much better understanding of typically how this works. One of the things that you had mentioned as we got started on this was that there's a lot of services available that aren't necessarily just money. Can we go into some of the other services specifically that PrairiesCan offers, maybe in that realm of consulting or helping people in different ways other than financial?
For sure. So I think actually one of the ones that I really like is Mount Royal University's Growth Catalyst program. And so what they do there is, so they will actually support the management team of a company that is growing. So they'll have like the CEO, CFO, and actually some of these CEOs for these companies, they maybe don't have all the skills, the business skills that they need. And so it's a mentorship program where they go in, they look at the company, they see, okay, how can you maybe grow further, faster, and so forth, and how could we, teach you some of those skills. So there's some really good coaching and mentorship programs out there that's not only about money. Another thing we're real fans of are collision spaces. And so we really like providing space for entrepreneurs, innovators to come together, to network, to talk about, the problems and solutions. But not only that, but to actually also have a space where they can actually interact with the adopters. And so there's one of my favorite projects ever is called the Energy Transition Center. So this is downtown Calgary, and it's a space where clean tech entrepreneurs can actually access oil and gas adopters, and there's some programming that gets done in there to help upskill some of this talent inside oil and gas that are trying to develop some clean tech solutions, and they're de-risking some of these solutions because oil and gas is in the room as well. So collision spaces, mentorship programs, applied research. So that's not only about money. So SAIT, so Polytechnic, you have SAIT, you have NATE here, who are, have labs and facilities where you can kind of go in with a prototype and pilot it and test it and de-risk your solution. So it's all about moving faster within this ecosystem and increasing the velocity of scaling some of these solutions.
Interesting. Okay, super cool. You touched on something here that I think a lot of people are like, oh, hold on. Because I think most people think that things like this, services like this, are for startups only. But it sounds like that's not the case.
No, so we're looking at all phases of entrepreneurship. So there's definitely the top end of the funnel where you have an idea, and then you can maybe and that's how you're starting. So that's when you talk about technology readiness levels, that's like technology readiness level, like number one. That's like you have an idea of something you want to do, and that's it. And so there's like programming and mentorship that you can get for that. But then there's also, okay, well, you're way past the idea. You have a team, you have a prototype, you actually have a solution. You're getting market traction. So there's programs for scale ups because they're selling whatever solution they have. And there's a lot of programming and mentorship and networking, access to capital that those types of companies require as well. So we're looking at every phase of entrepreneurship.
Amazing. Amazing. Man, you just opened a lot of doors for people, because I think there's a lot of misconception thinking that these spaces and these things are only for these new exciting tech companies and startups that are just looking for that boost. But that's not the case. That's not the case at all.
It's not, no. So actually PrairiesCan is more in the later stage. So we're more in like the scale up. Alberta Innovates is a little bit more in the startup. So early stage, early TRLs, R&D, research. Whereas PrairiesCan, we come in a little bit later in that entrepreneurial journey where the companies are close, they're actually getting revenues, they're out there selling stuff, and we're helping them take it to the next level. So there's like all these different challenges that an entrepreneur will face depending on what phase of the journey they're in.
And it's totally for the benefit of business, because what benefits all businesses basically benefits all of Alberta. And at the end of the day, that's your goal, is to benefit all of Alberta.
Absolutely. We're trying to benefit Alberta just by diversifying this economy so that we are more resilient, that we are more resilient to the ups and downs of the economy. And yeah, I think, countries and provinces that are more diversified, it's just only going to benefit Canadians and Albertans for sure.
Yeah. Totally. I think that's really important. I think it's important for people to realize that Canada as a whole benefits when any one of our provinces benefits, not just Alberta, not just Ontario, not just Newfoundland, but if any of these provinces benefit, we benefit as a whole. And so, agreed. I think it's important that we are fighting together to win together.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, that's a really good point.
Derek, we've been focused really heavily on Alberta just because obviously that's where we are, right? But prairies, implies more than just Alberta. Do you also support Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and into BC as well?
So PrairiesCan is Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and then we have organization called PrairiesCan, and that's just British Columbia. Western Economic Diversification used to look at all 4 provinces, but there was a realization that the prairies very different from British Columbia, so they split the 2 agencies into 2 separate ones. However, we work really closely with PrairiesCan on some initiatives because some of these things cross boundaries, of course. Of course, I work really closely with my Manitoba and Saskatchewan counterparts. I'm based in Calgary, so my focus is Calgary, Southern Alberta, but a lot of what I do, like I said, crosses boundaries. So I work really closely with my counterparts in the different provinces. A really good example of that is a really great organization called Movement 51. And so they're all about providing mentorship and programming to female investors to enable them to invest into female-led companies. And so they started they're Calgary based, and they started delivering programming here in Calgary, but they wanted to scale. They were doing so well, getting so much traction, getting really great economic outcomes, getting money off the sidelines into female-led companies. So we helped them scale across the prairies. And same thing with Startup TNT. They started in Calgary, they started their programming, and then we supported them to scale across the prairies as well. Things like hydrogen, which is a really big opportunity for Alberta, but also there could be hydrogen hubs all across the prairies. So absolutely, we look at things that are pan prairies for sure.
Amazing. Amazing. And let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously, hydrogen is super exciting. And in my mind, I think, I've thought of this for a little while, but I think that that could be a big solution to some of our energy challenges here in Alberta and across Canada. One of the other things that you work on is Energy Futures Lab. Can you introduce us to that?
So yeah, Energy Futures Lab is an organization. It's a not-for-profit organization, and they're like really interesting. So they have a lot of different individuals from different organizations and sectors. So they'll have government, they'll have oil and gas, they'll have clean tech entrepreneurs, they will have academia, they'll have environmental NGOs like a Pembina Institute and so forth. And what it is it brings people together to discuss these major challenges. So they call it a lab, and it's thought leaders that come together to really talk about the key opportunities and challenges in Alberta and across Canada when it comes to our energy future.
Oh, interesting. What has it been like being in a room with people like that? That must be pretty exciting.
It's really exciting and it's really interesting. I'm actually stepped away a little bit just when I became manager of innovation ecosystems. So one of my team members has taken more a day-to-day interest in Energy Futures Lab, but it is really interesting. You get a lot of different viewpoints, and it just goes to show that there are so many different perspectives. I think we alluded to earlier that not only in this country, but even within a sector in Alberta, you have all these different stakeholder groups that have different perspectives on how you should do it, what you should do, at what speed, at what scale, and so forth. And so I think that collaboration and that hashing it out is so important because it results at the end of the day in progress.
Yeah, no, totally, totally. And I'm excited to see what happens, honestly. Like, I'm really pumped to see kind of where we're going to go in the next little bit, especially with regards to hydrogen. I'm very hopeful for it.
I think so too. And I think you mentioned earlier, what was the one sector that, we see the most potential. And I forgot to answer your question there. And I absolutely think here in Alberta specifically is that energy transition. It's that clean energy, it's clean tech, it's reducing emissions. And a lot of people would see it as, a negative thing. It's going to harm our economy. I actually see it as the biggest economic opportunity of our lifetime. We did actually a study. We did a third-party study that goes to show that I think 150,000 jobs can be created and $61 billion in GDP can increase by 2050 through this new sector. And so it's such a big economic opportunity. So for me in Alberta, that is the sector we have focused on quite a bit. We've invested a lot into the hydrogen sector. I'd say out of that $100 million, probably $15-20 million is into hydrogen specifically. And so, one example there is we supported the Alberta Motor Transport Association to invest in hydrogen trucks. And so it's all about de-risking, because if you're a truck carrier, you don't want to invest in this really expensive hydrogen truck right off the bat. Like, you don't know if it works. You don't know if your drivers are going to be able to work it. You don't know how refueling is and so forth, how the conditions, if it's going to work in the Alberta conditions. So we have this de-risking initiative where, there's hydrogen trucks rolling around this province to try to, get people to invest in these trucks in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I'm I like the idea of electric vehicles. I just don't like the actual physical application of them, because in my mind, we don't have the energy storage capability yet for it to make a lot of sense, right? Like you said, we live in Canada, big country. For me to drive even to Banff, we're talking probably 5 hours straight. By the time I get there, my battery is depleted, and I hope to God that I can find a charging station. But once again, if I want to go see the mountains that day, I got to wait for my car to charge. Or if it's winter time, that's not going to fly, because now I've lost probably 10, 15, 20% of my battery storage. So now I can't even make it. So for me, I'm not sold on electric vehicles. I love the idea of them. I love the looks of them. I'm a huge fan of like the cars that are coming out from these electric vehicle manufacturers. I think they're gorgeous. I think they've done a great job at making them marketable and beautiful, but the application to me doesn't make sense. However, if we could do the same thing with hydrogen and burn a much cleaner fuel, then that changes my opinion completely. Or to have like both, where you have a hydrogen engine that is then charging a lithium battery, and then you get the best of both worlds. I like that idea.
Definitely. So, speaking as Derek Armstrong, a Canadian, I have a gas guzzling truck. And the reason why I don't have an electric truck is because it's just not good for me. I have 3 kids. We travel out to the mountains a lot. We use this truck for kind of those heavy duty activities. And I haven't, as a consumer, purchased an electric vehicle. I think it's coming, but the infrastructure definitely needs to be built out. I think for city driving, so my wife, who only goes 10 minutes around Calgary, she's in the market for an electric vehicle. It makes a lot more sense for her. And so I think it's very contextual around electric vehicles. And I do think it's coming. It is the future. The infrastructure just definitely needs to get built out, and it needs to be the convenience for consumers for an electric vehicle owner has to increase there, because time is money for people, and they don't want to spend a lot of time charging and being inconvenienced and having to go out of their way to charge and so forth. And so there's a little bit of concern about the dwindling market demand around electric vehicles, but I think it's going to come. But when it comes to hydrogen, Kelly, you'd have to talk to a much smarter person than myself. But apparently, hydrogen, there's never going to be a big market for consumer vehicles. The target market for hydrogen are heavy vehicles for some reason. So fixed origin destination, heavy trucks. Apparently that's the market segment for hydrogen.
Yeah. I will have to talk. I haven't had a hydrogen expert on here yet, but now you got my mind turning. I got to find one. You might know one, actually.
Oh yeah, there's several. Yeah. Dan Wicklum.
No, it is interesting, and I think either way, whatever happens, I'm excited to see what happens. I think we're in an interesting time for Alberta and Canada as a whole, and it'll be really interesting to see what's next. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and if we just open our eyes and say, you know what are the possibilities, we're going to be surprised.
For sure. Agreed. Yeah.
Derek, you've worked with PrairiesCan for quite a bit of time. We're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, seasoned ones, startups. What's your best growth advice for them using your experience from PrairiesCan?
So this is what I talk about a lot, and I talked a lot about today, is that don't go it alone. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't realize everything that is out there that is available to them at a very low cost, if not free, because of these government subsidies. So you can go join an accelerator, get in front of customers, get in front of adopters. You can go get this mentorship. You can go do pitch nights and get potential investment from angel investors. So why would you not get out there and get into the ecosystem? And I think that most Alberta entrepreneurs are in the ecosystem, but sometimes they come to me and I'm like, how have you not gone to Startup TNT? How have you not gone to CDL Rockies? How have you not been in Platform Innovation Center or Energy Transition Center? So that's my number one piece of advice is don't try to do this alone. You have to get out there, collaborate, and access all the support that is out there that is government funded.
Amazing. Amazing. Derek, this has been awesome. We've been chatting with Derek Armstrong, Manager of Innovation Systems at Prairies Economic Development Canada. Derek, it was an absolute honor having you on today.
Thanks so much, Kelly. That was fun.
Until next time, this has been the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.
Hey, Rockstars, Kelly here. And today I want to chat about one of our amazing sponsors, At Work Office Furniture. If you're an entrepreneur looking to upgrade your workspace, At Work Office Furniture is your go-to partner. For over 40 years, they've been providing premium, affordable office furniture and top-notch design services. Whether you need a single desk or a complete office overhaul, At Work has you covered. Their team of experts help you plan your space to maximize both comfort and efficiency. They're at the forefront of modern office trends, including those super cool office pods that give you an instant, quiet booth enclosure right in your open space, and movement-based setups to keep your team healthy and active. Here's the best part. At Work delivers and professionally installs across North America. No matter where you are, they'll make sure that your new office furniture arrives quickly and safely. I personally use an office chair and adjustable desk from At Work on a daily basis for my work and absolutely love them. Support the business that supports entrepreneurs like you. Check out www.atwork.ca to see their amazing range of products and services. Transform your workspace with At Work Office Furniture because great business starts with a great office. Thank you, At Work, for your support of the Business Development Podcast.